Oh, there's a 5-alarm fire, all right. But it's not happening at the White House. It's happening inside the DNC. Joining us right now, legal director for the Independent Women's Forum, Mailman, and Fox News contributor, Kaylee McGhee White. So great to have both of you. You know, May, that announcement speech where Graham Platner bails on his campaign, he really burned the party down as he walked out the door.
He did. So Graham Platner, I think, exposes a couple of huge problems for Democrats. One is, where are the normal men? He was recruited to be the brawny paper towel guy. And okay, so now he's got a Nazi tattoo. Okay, now he's got a history of sexual assault. There are no normal men. Men preferred Susan Collins by 7 points. They've got James Tallarico, who thinks God is non-binary. And the other real problem is that these socialist-style policies that are styled as for the working class are not actually favored by the working class. They're favored by the elites or former elites, like Graham Platner, whose oyster business services his mother's restaurant. So this is the problem with socialism, is that it is an idea of elites trying to pretend that they are oppressed because they've been told, go to the fancy high school, which Graham Platner did, go to a fancy college, maybe live in a fancy city, live in a shoebox, have a terrible dating pool, and then hope it all works out, when really the recipe for the American dream for success, people who are not trying to tear down everything that this country built, is to find joy in living in the greatest country, in the greatest era that we've ever lived in, with so much comfort that our ancestors would never have even believed that this is true, to appreciate your community, to appreciate your family, to sacrifice and to work hard.
Well, it really does tell you what the Democrat Party thinks of working class people, that this guy winds up being their poster boy. Kaylee, I want to ask you about this, though. You know, it's kind of remarkable to listen to him in that video talk about how he was he's part of a movement outside of the Democrat Party. But as soon as the Democrat Party says no money for you and get out, he starts crying and gets out. So was he really outside the party?
Yeah, he deserves an Oscar for that performance, by the way. The crocodile tears were just extremely rich. For a guy, as May pointed out, who has basically been handed every single thing in life, he somehow always finds a way to make himself the victim. Chuck Schumer didn't make him get the Nazi tattoo. Chuck Schumer didn't do any number of things. It was Graham Platner, whose pattern of behavior preceded this latest scandal, who was ultimately the guy who tanked his own campaign. You know, I do find it interesting, though, that he is trying to burn the Democratic Party down on the way out, because I think that that's the next best alternative to him actually winning the Senate seat, is this ability to make himself the martyr and to basically make himself the next Bernie Sanders, the guy that the establishment feared so much that they had to tear down on the way out. Now, I'm not sure if voters necessarily buy that, even past this November, but he's certainly going to try, and I think that Democrats are going to have a problem with this, especially with the rise of DSA candidates in particular, because what Democrats don't want to admit is that the reason these DSA candidates are gaining so much traction is because they actually believe in something. Take the Chevalier character up in New York, for example. I think she legitimately believes that she could abolish prisons and abolish crime if people just made enough money. Same thing, Zohran Mamdani. I think he legitimately believes that he is entitled to take your wealth and redistribute it. Now, they're lunatics, but they actually believe these things. People like Chuck Schumer and the Democratic establishment, they just believe in acquiring wealth, status, and power for themselves. They're not actually offering anything, and that's why people are running towards the DSA.
You know, May, one of the most appalling things that we saw in the Platner race was after the first accusations of him mistreating women first emerged, one of the first organizations to step up to carry water for him was Planned Parenthood. That to me, and you know, I get it. That's how they operate. All they care about is money and power. But it was a pretty disgusting look for an organization that claims to care about the health and welfare of women.
Yeah, on one hand, I want to say it's unsurprising for an organization that was built by someone who favored eugenics to favor the guy with the Nazi tattoo. But on the other hand, very seriously, it is hard to be a liberal woman because as a liberal woman, you are expected, identity-based, based on your sex, to support Democrats blindly. It doesn't matter whether they treat you poorly, but your identity as a woman requires you to support Graham Platner. And as it comes out, when these progressive males turn out to treat women poorly and they're still being asked to support, at some point, I think women will have enough.
Well, you know, Kaylee, I think eugenics is just the furthest extension of the identity politics that everyone in the Democrat Party these days embraces.
Yeah, and it's not just Planned Parenthood that has put its own hypocrisy on display. It's basically every single Democratic politician, especially those who built their brand during the Me Too era. You think about Kirsten Gillibrand, who decided to support Platner even after the first accusation came out. And then there's Ro Khanna, whose stated position was that he was okay with a little bit of assault as long as it's not a lot of bit of assault.
Right.
So that's great for him. So really, they've made a spectacle of themselves throughout this entire thing. And I think it doesn't matter who they nominate after Graham Platner, because I think their brand has been so irreparably damaged by their own hypocrisy in this state, and potentially it's going to affect other races across the country as well.
And of course, let's not forget that Gillibrand led the charge to run Al Franken out of the Senate over a goofy picture, whereas she had no problem whatsoever with all of these rape allegations. May and Kaylee, thank you both so much for joining us.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.